The committee chamber was already electric before the first words were spoken, cameras capturing every slight movement, every raised eyebrow, every suppressed smile. It was the kind of hearing that had the potential to ignite headlines, and the clash between Stephen Miller and Representative Jasmine Crockett was a showdown waiting to happen. Miller, notorious for his dismissive smirk and a knack for needling opponents with derision, seemed eager to provoke. Crockett, known for her razor-sharp delivery and refusal to be undermined, carried herself with the calm readiness of someone who knew she was being set up for confrontation. When Crockett began laying out her argument, pointing out not only the inconsistencies in Miller's testimony but also the deeper harm of his policy record, Miller leaned back with a quiet chuckle. It wasn't the chuckle of amusement but one of condescension, the kind that sought to undermine without words, to make the speaker seem petty or unserious. The sound hung in the air, noticeable enough to pull the eyes of the room toward him, and for a moment, it seemed as if he had succeeded in his attempt to trivialize her words. But Crockett's pause was deliberate. She stopped mid-sentence, locked her eyes on Miller, and let the silence stretch. The room went still. She tilted her head slightly, her expression shifting from calm explanation to a cold, surgical stare that suggested she had been waiting for this exact moment. "I see you think this is funny," she said, her tone steady and low, yet carrying across the room with the weight of authority. Miller's smirk faltered slightly, but she pressed forward, not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that silences even the most seasoned provocateurs. "You may laugh, but the only people who find humor in your policies are the ones who benefit from cruelty. Families who were torn apart certainly weren't laughing. Communities that lived under fear didn't chuckle. And the fact that you can sit here and find amusement in their pain says more about you than it ever will about me." Her words cut through the chamber like glass. A murmur spread among those present, some shifting uncomfortably, others quietly impressed by her precision. Miller attempted to readjust his posture, pulling himself upright as though trying to regain control, but Crockett didn't let him. She leaned in slightly, her tone cooling even further, almost surgical. "Let me make this clear, this isn't a performance. These aren't punchlines. These are lives. And while you're here dismissing facts with a smirk, the rest of us are here to reckon with the truth." The subtle but undeniable silence that followed was proof that her words had landed exactly as intended. Even those who often sided with Miller avoided eye contact with him, sensing the shift in energy. Crockett didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat or embellish. She simply returned to her argument with a seamless transition, as if his attempt to dismiss her was nothing more than a minor distraction she had dispatched with ease. Miller, for once, was left speechless, his chuckle reduced to an awkward memory, his smirk replaced with the thin line of someone who realized he had underestimated his opponent. The cameras caught it all, the chuckle, the cold response, the silence afterward, and the story was already writing itself in real time. The silence that lingered after Jasmine Crockett's sharp rebuke felt heavier than any gavel strike. Stephen Miller, usually so quick to fire back, found himself momentarily frozen. He shifted in his seat, tugging at his jacket sleeve as if trying to regain composure, but the weight of Crockett's words had already shifted the atmosphere. The audience in the gallery sat straighter, sensing that a turning point had been reached. Journalists scribbled furiously, eager to capture the soundbite that had just sliced through the chamber. But Crockett wasn't done, not by a long shot. She had spotted the vulnerability in Miller's facade and moved with the precision of a litigator who knew she had the advantage. She leaned back slightly, her calm demeanor intact, and continued with a voice that was deliberate and unyielding. "You see, Mr. Miller," she began, eyes steady on him, "the difference between the two of us is simple. You treat governance as theater, where smirks and chuckles are substitutes for substance. I treat it as a responsibility, one that affects millions of people who don't have the luxury of dismissing policy as entertainment." She gestured toward the stacks of reports and testimonies before her, her hand resting briefly on the documents like a reminder of the evidence she carried. "These papers aren't jokes. They're filled with the stories of children separated from parents, families trapped in cycles of fear, and communities who paid the price for your experiments in cruelty." Miller tried to interject, his mouth opening as if to reclaim the floor, but Crockett was too quick. She raised a hand, not to silence him rudely but to assert control. "No, you've had your time to talk. And all you could offer in response to truth was a laugh. That speaks volumes. Her voice cut cleanly through the murmurs that had begun to ripple again in the room. You can belittle me, you can dismiss me, but you cannot erase the reality that your decisions left scars. And history won't remember your smirk, it will remember the suffering. The air shifted again. This time, even those on Miller's side seemed unwilling to meet his eye. He straightened in his chair, his earlier confidence now replaced with visible tension. Crockett didn't stop. She pressed further, her words measured, each one carrying a sting. You chuckled today because you thought this was about me. But I'm not here to win a personal fight with you. I'm here because the people who elected me demand someone who won't let their pain be reduced to a punchline. You don't intimidate me, and you certainly don't invalidate the truth just because it makes you uncomfortable. By now, the cameras were zoomed in tightly, capturing the expressionless mask Miller wore to cover his discomfort, and the unshaken confidence in Crockett's stance. She didn't gloat, didn't raise her arms in triumph. Instead, she lowered her voice, making the room lean in. You can laugh all you want, but every time you do, you remind us why we fight harder, for dignity, for justice, for the people you tried to forget. So chuckle again if you'd like, because the louder you laugh, the clearer it becomes just how hollow your arguments really are. The words hit like a final blow. Miller's smirk was gone entirely, replaced with the stiff posture of a man who realized he had been disarmed in full public view. The gallery erupted with quiet applause, quickly hushed by the chair, but the sound lingered long enough to punctuate the exchange. Crockett sat back, her face composed, her hands calmly folded, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet everyone in the room knew they had just witnessed a moment destined to dominate headlines and replay clips across every media platform. Stephen Miller had tried to chuckle away her argument, but Jasmine Crockett's cold, commanding response had left him with nothing but silence, and a reputation bruised in front of the nation.